everybody to the Cook with Your Farmer vegetable cobbler class. We're so excited. I just want to do a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to do a short introduction about oak. Ben will get an opportunity to talk a little bit more about Rootbound Farm. They're located in Crestwood, Kentucky, and offer a main season CSA. So he's going to share a little bit more about the community supported agriculture program he runs. And then Chef Tanya is going to kick it off with our vegetable cobbler demonstration. And so we have a toolkit. Robin's going to drop that into the chat so you can follow along. It's going to have all the ingredients you need and the directions to make this recipe so you can cook along. And then for anyone that's not familiar, Oak is a statewide nonprofit. Our mission is to advance organics across Kentucky, and we do that in a variety of ways. And we promote organic farming for several reasons. So if you're curious about why organic and why it matters, organic farms are always non-GMO. They eliminate exposure to over 700 different chemicals. They're really targeted on promoting soil health and increasing the soil organic matter, so that healthier soil is going to grow healthier food, and targeted on preserving farmland as well as preserving pollinators and biodiversity. And we promote organics in a variety of ways with Oaks. We do community outreach events like this one. We have an annual farming conference. We host farmer field days. We also have a workplace CSA program that Rootbound Farm is a part of. So we'll share a little bit more about that. And we have an online find a farm directory. So if you are curious about how to find local organic food in your area, you can go onto our directory and you can put in your zip code, you can put in a product, and you can try to find a farm anywhere close to you. So that's great. So just to reiterate who we have on the call with us today, we have Ben Abel from Rootbound Farm, and we have Chef Tanya from the Food Connection. I'm going to pass it off to Ben. He's going to do a little bit more of an introduction of Rootbound and share with you what he has going on in the farm right now. He's in his kitchen making dinner as well. Hi, Ben. How's it going? If you want to unmute yourself, I'll let you kick it off.
Hi, everybody. And Katie, everyone from Oak, Chef Tanya, thank you all very much, first of all, for utilizing our veggies and letting us take part in this really cool event. So my name is Ben Abel. My wife, Bree Pearsall, and I own and operate Rootbound Farm in Oldham County. We grow certified organic produce on about 80 acres, and we raise certified organic laying hens, broilers, meat chickens, and grass-fed lamb. Our farm, we've been here in Oldham County for seven years now, but prior to that, I worked for UK. There wasn't anything cool like the Food Connection going on then, so it's really cool to see that there's a targeted and really committed part of the university dealing with eating healthy, supporting local farms. We are a CSA farm primarily. So a CSA farm is community supported agriculture, sometimes called a farm share. It's a model where customers commit to spending the growing season with us, paying either upfront or in installments, and in return for their financial commitment, they get a weekly box of fresh produce from our farm. At Rootbound, that weekly box of fresh produce is customizable based on what we have in season at the time. So generally speaking, we'll have anywhere from 12 to 18 items customers can choose from to create their core box, which is usually 6 to 9 items, depending on the size share they choose. This allows individuals and families to have the flexibility to kind of select food that's best for their eating habits and or the week they have ahead. And it also works great for the farmer because it helps us ebb and flow that different harvest, whereas we might not have enough curly kale for everyone one week. Well, some people don't like curly kale and they choose instead to have collards. So it helps the farmer manage their harvest, and it helps the customer kind of have the best outcome with their weekly veggie box. Katie, anything else about CSA?
No, that's great. We just always like to, I know you guys participate in the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition program. So Rootbound is a workplace CSA member and helps bring in some of their veggies to different workplaces across Kentucky. And I know you guys are very dedicated to that CSA model because of the connection with growers, and was just wondering if you could share just a little bit more about like why your farm's certified organic and why you kind of are supporting organic farming practices as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we first became an organic farm because, well, really the commitment to environmental health and to social health. So it's better for the environment, it's better for the consumers, and it's better for us farmers and the farm workers that are here on our farm raising this produce. So we're committed to organic farming, and we're committed to being a certified organic farm, because that adds a degree of transparency. And that's not the right choice for every farm, but for us, it does give a sort of another level of auditing and another degree of accountability. When you see that certified organic label, you know you get audited, you get inspected, and you have to fill out extensive paperwork to maintain that certification, showing your commitment to the land, the health of the land, and the health of your consumers. We're part of the Organic Association of Kentucky because that puts us in a network of farmers and consumers that are equally committed to supporting organic farmers and increasing consumer knowledge and use of certified organic products. And then the CSA model, of course, fits our farm. We're kind of a mid-sized family farm. The CSA model allows us to develop a relationship with customers that is otherwise difficult to do. We spend the whole season together, the summer season, the fall season, and when we offer a winter share, the winter season. So we're able to sort of, we're able to develop a deeper relationship with the people buying our produce. They support us, and we hopefully support them by giving them the opportunity to eat healthy, fresh food.
No, that's great, Ben. Thank you so much. And I just have one more slide. I was just gonna have you share for the folks that have a meal kit and are cooking along with us, what came from Rootbound Farm? What did you guys harvest for us?
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this time of year is really a spectacular time of year on the farm, because we still have a lot of, I mean, yesterday, right, was the first day of fall, and today's weather just spectacularly fall-like. Up here, we woke up to being 45 degrees this morning, and I think got into the low 60s. It's a gorgeous time of year to be outside, enjoy the weather, and it's a gorgeous time of year to be a farmer. So we're still harvesting a lot of our summer crops. Tomatoes, peppers are still in season. Kind of some of the last harvest of peppers coming in, some of the last harvest of tomatoes, but they're still full of that good summer flavor. And at the same time, we're starting to rake in the fall staples, the leafy greens like curly kale, the hard squashes that are our storage squashes like butternut squash that you've got in the share. And then of course our garlic is harvested back in June, but garlic of course keeps. So the garlic is harvested in June, it's dried, it's cured or dried, and then it keeps hopefully well into the winter, if not all winter long. We're actually next week, in 2 weeks, we'll start planting garlic that'll be ready for next year's harvest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Garlic's almost a year-long endeavor in terms of you planting it in October and you're harvesting it in June. So it stays in the ground a long time. But thank you so much, Ben. And we're so grateful that you were able to harvest all those veggies for the meal kits. And Chef Tanya, thank you for assembling all of those meal kits for the folks that are tuning in. And we are going to kick it off to Chef Tanya, and she's going to be showing us how to make this fall vegetable cobbler. And we'll have Ben popping in and out for a little bit to kind of share his thoughts too.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you so much, Ben. If I'm not mistaken, you were bringing gorgeous produce out to Holly Hill Inn when I worked there. I can remember some sweet potatoes nearing football size that we were adding to the menu back then. So it's been wonderful to sample your gorgeous produce all this time. One thing I want to go over very quickly is I hope you have a copy of your toolkit, because this has everything in it you'll need food-wise and equipment-wise. I'm not going to go over every detail on this, but I do hope you've assembled or are quickly assembling all the equipment that you'll need, and that way you won't be running around the kitchen. I know it's easy to miss some of the steps if you're concerned about, oh my gosh, I forgot to get a whisk. So if you do miss a step, please put that in the chat and we'll try to answer that, or Katie or Robin can ping me and we can go over that once again. We will be cooking along for a big part of this, but when it gets toward the end, I do have some shortcuts so that I can show you the finished dish. And we'll answer questions at that time because we don't want to just sit here while your cobbler is baking. So I love a cobbler recipe because, as Ben was talking about, we're in a transition time, and I'm going to pull this lovely food kit right in front of the cutting board camera so that you can see all of the color that's going on right now. It really is marvelous. And you may not think about a lot of these flavors going together well, but actually they blend really well. I just tasted one version of this, and it's absolutely marvelous. So in your food kit, and come along with me, you should have a stalk of celery, a carrot. We get really huge carrots, so if you have a kit, we cut it in half. So our carrots are worth at least 2, sometimes 3 of a grocery store carrot. We have a little bit of onion, and so those 3 things are a great starter for just about any kind of saucy, soupy kind of one-pot meal. It's called mirepoix in French. It's a wonderful way to get started. And now for all of the root-bound veg. Would you just look at this beautiful curly kale? It's so tender. It's got snap to it, and it's absolutely delicious. When we start getting into the winter months, the dark leafy greens lose some of their bitterness. They get a little bit sweeter. So if you think you're not a fan of greens, try them in the winter because they're a different kind of vegetable then. We have half of a green pepper. We're just going to add that. Beautiful crispy green peppers. If you have the kit, you just have that half. We've given you, even though some of these garlic cloves are a bit large, I went ahead and gave you 3, like the recipe says, because I like a lot of garlic. It goes well. And just trying to see, I thought I heard something. It goes well with all of these veggies and gives it a nice background flavor. And then if you've got a kit, we par roasted the butternut squash. And so you may have a bowl piece or neck pieces. I'm going to show you how to peel that and break that down to go into our recipe. If you have a bowl piece, it may be a little bit more tender than the neck, so just be careful while you're cutting that. And then finally, I just can't believe these are end of season tomatoes. They're absolutely gorgeous. They have a lot of weight. They're the perfect balance of sweet and tangy. Like, in fact, I haven't had a tomato that had this kind of really nice zestiness to it in a long time. So these are a treat. And these are huge, and so they give you a lot of tomatoes to add to your sauce. So you're not just relying on the veg stock. Now, we gave you all some veg stock, some cornstarch, and some hot sauce because that will round out our recipe tonight. We make our veg stock in-house with scraps that we have left over from the classes that we do. So you'll notice that it has just a tiny bit of a pink tinge to it. Don't worry about that. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. It just means we had a little beet peel in all of that frozen veg when we put it in there. Beet is wonderful for flavor in a veg stock, but it does give you a little bit of a pink hue. Once we add all our veggies and our tomatoes, you won't see the difference actually. So we're going to start by breaking all of this down. I'm going to do a real brief knife safety demo before we get started for those who might not cook as often but are very much interested in increasing their knife skills. Whenever you use a big chef's knife like this, you want to curl the bottom 3 fingers of your cutting hand around the blade, and then you want to take forefinger and thumb and actually pinch on the metal right at the widest part. This gives you a nice stable hold on the knife. With the other hand, you want to make a claw, and here at UK we call that the Wildcat Claw, and that keeps everything out of the way of your knife blade while you're cutting. Try not to put your pinky down. That's a very dangerous thing to do. So keep everything tucked up underneath, even if you are using something small like this piece of garlic. You still want to tuck everything up and keep everything safe. You are cutting toward your cutting board, never toward yourself, never toward anyone else. And if your knife should fall, just let it fall to the floor. Don't try to catch it or you can injure yourself. Whenever you're done using your knife, you never want to put it in a sink or a bucket full of soapy water for someone to come by and hurt themselves on. So don't ever put any kind of blade in soapy water, and that'll prevent injury. Now I'm going to go over breaking down all these veg. That's what we'll do first. And also I think it'll give you a little time to gather ingredients if you haven't already. So I'm going to go over this slowly for me. I think sometimes I can still get a little fast. So if I am going too fast, just put that in the chat and Robin or Katie will shout out to me and let me know that I need to slow down. For those of you who don't have a kit, you want to go ahead and break your onion down. And you may use a whole onion. We get really big onions here, so we've used halves just because they can be really bulky. I also like to have two things in addition to my cutting board and my knife. One is a really big discard bowl so that I can toss everything in it and not run back and forth between the garbage can. And then a bunch of little containers or bowls so that I can put all of my processed ingredients, I hate to say processed, all of the ingredients that I'm chopping or julienning, little containers to put those in so I can get them off my board and have this space free. When you have a clear cutting board, you can have a clear and focused mind when you're cooking. So we're going to start with the onion. That's the part where I like to begin. And I'm going to cut, if you can have your onion and you see that it has almost like a candle flame shape. There's a little point up at the top. The point is the stem end. And the bottom, you might have a little bit of a core there, a tough core. We'll cut that out. That's the root end. I'm always going to cut toward the root of the onion because that'll hold my onion together until I get ready to fully dice it. I'm pulling it to the edge of my cutting board so that my handle doesn't make my knife go diagonal. And really what you're doing is you're just lifting your knife up, keeping it parallel to your board. And you're going to make two cuts, 2 to 3, depending on how big your onion is. Whoever is doing this at home who purchased or had all the ingredients. So 2 to 3, I'm going to make them about 3/8 of an inch apart, but don't worry, you're not going to measure this, but that's an estimate. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to make a cut almost, but not all the way through. I'm going to stop like there's a finger's width, some kind of force field, preventing me from cutting all the way through the onion. The way you want to stay safe by doing that is putting your claw on top of the onion. So we're going to lift up and cut into the onion. This is easiest if you have a nice sharp knife. I'm now going all the way through and I'm going to pull my knife back out. And then I'm going to lift up the same distance, about 3/8 of an inch, and cut again, not going all the way through. What that does is it gives me 3 slices that are still held together by the root end. Now turn the root end away from you, and you're going to take the last tip of your knife and just press down, again, about 3/8 of an inch apart. Try to keep all of your cuts even. Claw on top, kind of use your knuckles to help guide. Don't cut all the way through the onion. You're going very close to the root end. But basically, where we had slices before, we now have sticks that are all held together. I'm going to turn it back the way it was. So this is the end that is held together. And I'm going to cut across there. Then we get a perfect medium dice. 1, 2, 3. Easy to break down. If you get to that end that you didn't cut through, you can turn it on its more stable side, slice that piece, and then cut across for more dice. Again, you want to cut out, if you have a little core, you want to make a little divot and cut that out. And then put that in a container. Set that aside and get it all off of your board. Next, I'll do the celery. You're going to take off the widest part, and toss that into your discard bowl. I'm going to take off these little bits here, and any bits that are brown you want to take off. Anything you wouldn't eat, go ahead and get rid of before you cut. It's much easier to take off now than to try and pick it out of a dice. So if you have a piece that has this little seam right here, then this makes a nice little handle to hold on to, and I'm going to set it on its most stable side, which is the flatter side, and I'm just going to press my knife in and drag. And do that. This is a large piece of celery, so I'm going to do that about 4 times. Over here, we may not go all the way up for this 4th time. It may just be to split this piece at its widest part. So now you have all of these sticks, and you can pull them together, and with your claw, kind of press them down together, cut across, and you get a perfect medium dice. So come along with me on this. You're not lifting your knife off the board. You're just kind of sliding it back and forth. The tip is maintaining contact with your cutting board. I'm going down to the seam, and then I can turn it around and just split this little handle in half. Across there. We're going to use the whole stalk, and then I'm going to toss that in my discard bowl. Now, in here, as I've told you, we use our discard bowls kind of for veggie scrap to make stock with later. Next, I'm going to start with a carrot, and hopefully you have a peeler handy. That was on your equipment list. We're going to peel away from ourselves. Don't forget that a peeler is still a blade, so you don't want to cut toward yourself. And cut over a cutting board or a discard bowl instead of the garbage can, so that you don't drop it down in somewhere you don't want to pull it out of. All right, and peels into the discard bowl. To kind of square this up a little bit, I'm going to take off this stem end. Now this is trying to roll around on me, so I need to get it stable. So we're going to take off a slice, what I'm going to use as the width for all of my slices. 1 slice there. Now I have a nice stable surface. If you have a long carrot, if you bought your own, you want to make it a manageable size. So cut it into about 3 to 4 inch lengths. That's much easier to handle than an entire length of carrot. So I'm going to keep on making slices now that I've cut that side off. Be careful when it gets to the end. You might want to make sure that the tip of your knife hits the board first, and then that way you can use that leverage to go ahead and make your slice. And now we just pile these up. And again, like with the onion, we go from slices to sticks. If you are not comfortable cutting across more than 1 slice at a time, then take them apart and do them 1 at a time. And if there are any questions, or if you need a repeat, just let us know. Now, I've got this nice pile of carrot sticks. It would be great on a veggie tray. It's a little bit big for me to handle with my hands, so I'm going to split it in half. You can do this as well. Anytime you're having difficulty handling, breaking down veg, break it apart so that it's more manageable for you. And then cut across here. And we get a small dice again. Put this part in a bowl. Store up the carrots and go on to the second pile. Keep that claw, especially toward the end. And then you're done with your carrots. So you've got your mirepoix done. We're going to take this beautiful crisp green pepper. We'll take the stem off of it. I'm trying not to take too much of the pepper off. If you do, you can always cut that off as well. I'm going to take the bottom off, but I'm going to reserve it because we'll use that too. So now I have this very open pepper, and I'm just going to slice the rib out and the pith. And you might want to just take the tip of your knife and keep slicing. Cut away from yourself whenever you do this, not toward your fingers. Sometimes you can, once you get it going, you can kind of pull everything out, tap out all of the seeds. I might get this little bit of pith here. Pith is fine, it's perfectly edible. It just has a different texture and sometimes not as much flavor as the flesh of the pepper. Now that I've got that all done, I can kind of whack the pepper with the heel of my hand, and that makes a nice rectangle. Very crisp pepper, beautiful. And we'll cut this into strips.
Chef T, that looks so good. Those look great. And I wasn't sure, I know Ben's gonna hop off in a few minutes. If you had any questions for him before he goes about peppers or kale, or what were you most surprised about? I guess those tomatoes, right?
Yes, those tomatoes are absolutely beautiful. And Ben, they're so regular, like they're all, you know, exactly the same.
What variety were those? Those are like a classic hybrid, right, Ben?
Yeah, so being an organic farm, we have to, and being a CSA farm, we've made a commitment to our customers to grow the best possible produce under when you have good under the best possible situations. So in Kentucky, organic farming, we have a lot of difficulty with certain crops. Some are worse with pests, and some have more trouble with diseases. With tomatoes, they're a disease, very, very sensitive to diseases, especially early blight and late blight. So we balance how we pick tomatoes are based on it working for our farm, which means it has to be disease resistant. But within that constraint, you can get disease-resistant tomatoes that taste like cardboard. And so what we strive to do is get the most flavorful, fully ripe tomato varieties that still resist disease. So that's what we choose. Those are a variety called Galahad. It's bred by a company called Johnny Seeds, which focuses on breeding, does some focus on breeding for organic farmers. But selling to a fresh market. So selling to fresh consumers that appreciate the flavor.
Thank you so much, Ben. Yeah, that's great insight on the tomatoes and just kind of picking seeds that are specific for organic farms. So they are more like disease resistant or pest resistant, like you said. We're so happy you could join us and tune in. Do you want to let the group know what you're headed off to do?
Okay, yeah, sure. So we've got, we also raise sheep, like I mentioned, and we bought a large group of 45 ewes of adult female sheep that we bought from a farm up in Pennsylvania that focuses on grass-fed, parasite-resistant genetics. So they're going to be here in a few minutes. I got to get the gates set up and unload some sheep.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're so happy you could tune in and join us. And thank you for sharing everything that you do at Rootbound Farm.
Thank you all. Thank you to Oak and thank you to UK.
Okay. Bye.
Go Cats.
Well, that's the perfect plug. And so we'll get started again. It's 6 o'clock, y'all, and we have a timer on our lights. We're going to get those in just a second. I'm going to move along to the kale. I'm kind of trying to do the veg from cleanest on your board to messiest. So we'll do the kale next, and then we'll finish up with the garlic, the tomatoes, and the butternut. So with this kale, it is beautiful, crispy kale. It's easiest to strip for me to grab the stem in one hand and then just sort of make a ring with the other hand and pull. So you're sort of stripping the kale from the stem. And in the kits, we try to give you about the amount I have here. It'll be plenty. If you get a smaller bunch from the grocery store, you may want to see. Kale does shrink when you cook it. So it may look like a lot right now, like a big pile, but it will get much smaller. Now, the easiest way to break down kale or big leafy things like this, or even leafy herbs, is to kind of bunch and roll when you have a pile of them. Like a burrito, you're just sort of bunching and rolling. Don't crush, don't bruise, but hold it all together. tuck your fingers in that claw and start to slice. Now this is an actual knife cut. It's called chiffonade when you make ribbons like this. With herbs, you make little teeny tiny ribbons. But we'll do this, and so that the pieces aren't really long strands, I'm going to run my knife through and just chop. We've got a nice chop on this kale. You want bite-sized pieces. You don't want to go to take a bite of your cobbler and have things hanging out of your mouth. All right, so greens in a bowl or a container to get them off the board. And we'll set that aside till we're ready. Next, I'm going to do this gorgeous garlic. If you picked up a kit, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's huge, it's aromatic, it's really got tight skin and the bulbs are tight. You just know that they're perfect little heads of garlic. So we're gonna put our garlic on a stable side, put our knives on top of it with the blade facing away, and whack it with the heel of your hand or with a fist. And that should pop even those tight little papers open. And then you can pull the paper off of your garlic. There is a little woody end on each clove, and we're going to hang on to that like a handle like we did with the celery. I want to make sure that my bowls are in the way so you can see, because this is tiny, it's white on white here. So we will slice, again, tiny little claw, don't set a pinky down. Slice through the garlic, try to put it on a stable side if there is one. And then when it gets wobbly over here, I just turn it on its wider side and cut again till I get to that little woody part, which I'm going to toss in the discard bowl. And repeat. Like I said, I love garlic, especially in this dish. So I'm putting all three of these big cloves in. And then we get to do the move from every cooking show ever. Kind of pull everything together, put the tip of your knife down, hand on the spine, and we're going to mince all this garlic. Mince is just 1/8 by 1/8 or smaller. And you just want to make sure everything gets down to about the same size. We're cooking this, so if you really like garlic and don't want to go down that small, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure everything's sort of similar so that it cooks evenly. I've got that big chunk right there I need to work on. And there we go. Garlic is ready. Next thing we're going to do is the butternut squash. Again, I hope you were able to catch in the recipe that you par cook it if you did not receive a kit. If not, just throw it in the oven and catch up with us in a little bit. It'll all work out. This is a very forgiving recipe. So you have a piece kind of like this. It does still have the skin on. I'm just going to take my knife and cutting away from myself. Take that skin off. It should, if you par cook it, it should come off fairly easily. If you have raw squash and don't want to worry about par cooking, you can peel it and break it down in its raw state and add it to this. It should cook with the maybe a little bit more time. You could add it in between the sauteing and the baking in the oven. And we're going to cut that into slices. And cut the slices into sticks. Do you see a pattern here? Again, if you are uncomfortable doing slices stacked up, if things are sliding around, you're afraid you're going to get hurt, take them apart and just do one slice at a time. And I'm going to throw everything into the bowl. I think that's plenty. I'm not going to actually break this one down. Unless we just need to fill a little time.
Yeah, Chef Tanya, we were hoping at the end we could talk a little bit about stock. Someone was wondering if the garlic peels were good for stock.
I don't, because sometimes those peels can add a little kick of bitterness, and you're wanting to balance out the sweet and the bitter in a stock. So onion peels can also add bitterness. It just depends on the ratio of what you're putting in. Sometimes you won't taste it if you have a lot of sweet things. A lot of times we do a lot of carrots, we do a lot of fall squash. And so we have a lot of sweet things that balance out that bitterness, and so I won't bother pulling out my garlic paper. But if you are more on the side of onion, garlic, celery, everything's gonna have a little bit of harshness in the background, you may wanna go ahead and pull those out. I know that's not just a pat answer. I'm the worst at giving just a pat answer. I guess if I were forced, I would say no. How about that?
Okay, it's flexible depending on the ratio, but when in doubt, leave it out.
Yes. All right, on these beautiful, nice, heavy tomatoes, and I really do hope that all of you picked up a kit because they are absolutely just wonderful. I'm gonna slice off this little brown bit that's on the end. So I'm just gonna hang on to it while it's trying to roll around and slice that off. And now I don't take the cores out with a paring knife because it annoys me. And also people tend to cut toward themselves when they use a paring knife to get the core out. So I'm going to quarter my tomato. I'll show this to you again. And then see my core is right here. I don't know if you can see. My core is right there. I'm just going to slide my knife in sort of an angle and take that piece out. So the core is now completely gone. And it's a really easy way to take the cores out. All right. Got to take care of a technical thing. Just hang with me a little bit. Keep working on your tomatoes. Taking out those cores, and then we're just going to chop these. So with these bigger pieces, we're going to make a couple slices and turn. And now if you feel comfortable, you can make your sticks from your slices. And then chop, or you could do them one at a time. Now, these tomatoes are super juicy and they're going to add, I didn't give myself enough bowls, 1 second. They're going to add a lot of liquid to our cobbler. Turn. Sticks. And so you can make a little bit larger chop if you want to. These are just going to break down. Try to get all the juice while you're cleaning off the board.
Let's see. Chef Tanya, it looks like one of your, oh, you're muted for just a moment. I think Chef T, you're muted. I think when you restarted your audio. I'm so sorry. Sorry, everybody. We're reconnecting to audio. Just keep chopping. And then if you want, drop into the chat. Let us know how it's going.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm having a technical issue. I'm trying to get someone to help out with that as soon as possible. I was trying to avoid this, but it just didn't happen. So,
Yeah, we'll let Chef T kind of get everything solved with her other camera. I know, Constance, the tomatoes, so good. What do you think? Because you got a meal kit. Let us know if you got to try one, or if anyone else was found anything exciting about the meal kits. If you have any questions.
Everything looks great. This is so awesome. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you, Constance. We appreciate it. Kristen, is it going okay in your kitchen?
Yeah, I'm having technical issues, but the cooking part's fine.
Oh, okay. Not technical issues with Zoom or?
No, it's all me.
Okay, well, if we can help out with anything, just drop into the chat. We're here for everybody, so.
Thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, of course. And we were talking, oh great, Sherry, beautiful tomatoes. I'm glad everything's looking great. We're really excited. Chef Tanya was talking about this recipe, and it really can be adjusted a lot with different types of vegetables throughout the season. So in the summer or later summer, if you wanted something a little bit more savory, you can use eggplant and cucumber and summer squash and things like that. And then as it gets a little bit, oh, Chef T, are you back?
yeah, we're just getting this other one booted up, so we should be back in just a second.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, because I think we're working with 2 cameras. So I know you usually have like an iPad or something like that. But if you guys want, as it gets a little bit farther into the fall, we can try to share out in my follow-up email the version of this cobbler that's really root veg heavy. So it's got sweet potatoes, turnips, beets, and that's another variation of this that you can continue to do. So it's kind of a template recipe that you can use with so many different vegetables. Oh, absolutely, Sherry. In terms of what's good for making stocks, I think we can spend some time when this recipe goes in the oven. We'll have a little bit of time to talk about making stock and what are some great items to use. It is really flexible, so you can use a lot of your scraps, but kind of just the process and what to do with it. And Robin, I know you have some experience making stock. If you want to get us started with that conversation, that would be great.
That's really funny because right before Chef T answered the question, I do put my garlic and onion peels in my stock, unfortunately.
Hey, to each his own, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I think I do what everyone else should do, is just anytime you're preparing vegetables, have a little freezer bag and keep it in your freezer. And the carrot peels are great. And I think what Chef T pointed out is keeping in mind that sweet and bitter balance. So it really depends on what food you're using. And peels, the peels of any vegetable are great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like, Chef Tanya, you might be muted on one end, so we'll just double check your audio.
Okay.
Oh, I hear you. So I hear
All
you.
right, yeah. I had to run around and switch on my mutes again after coming back on. Robin, that is right. I mean, you can make veg stock out of anything. A lot of guides will tell you that you can't put cruciferous veg in a stock, but for me, if I'm making something where that won't hurt, so if I make a cauliflower risotto, I'll put the cauliflower stalk in this stalk in the stock, or broccoli, especially if it's a dish that's going to get a lot of heavy flavors. I don't mind that. Now you'll get a little bit of a sulfuric smell when it's cold, but not after it's reheated again. So veggie stock is, one of my favorite veggie stocks ever was just parsnip peels, leek greens, and mushroom stems. And it's a few herbs, and it was gorgeous.
I was just going to say, like, the backbone of the veggie stock is the mushroom stems, and you said it before I did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll finish up. I hope you guys had the time while we were scrambling to finish up your tomatoes, and you're probably ahead of me now. But all we need now is to peel, or no, all we need now is to get started cooking. These tomatoes smell amazing. I still am just sort of overwhelmed with how beautiful they are being end of season. And a lot of varieties that we like and therefore that farmers grow are very sweet varieties now. But I love a tangy tomato. I like a little zip to it. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my board here and get ready for our second step before I step over here. I'm going to see if I can't take you with me. Now I'm nervous. See if I can't take you with me over here and we'll get started on the cooking part. Your mise en place is having everything together. So we are going to take all the veg over to our pan. A lot of it's going to go in together because it's very similar, except for it's got a particular order, as you can tell by the recipe. And I want to kind of go over that as we put it together. Let me see if I can move this camera to where let's see inside my pan. Now you just need some form of oven-proof skillet. If you have one with a lid, that's great. If not, we'll pull this around here. If you have one with a lid, that's wonderful. If not, then you can just use a piece of aluminum foil. I'm going to turn on my burner to about medium-high heat and get that going. While that's heating, we're going to do one other step. Take your veggie stock. And you're going to add, if you have a kit, we have measured out your cornstarch to 3 tablespoons. If not, you'll need to measure out 3 tablespoons. We want cold stock for the cornstarch because if it were warm, it would start to cook the cornstarch. And we want to grab a whisk and whisk that together. Cornstarch is going to be a little resistant at first, and we may need to re-whisk right before we pour it in. But we're going to get this together. The cornstarch will help thicken our sauce, and if you like just a little piquant flavor, I'm going to put a little hot sauce in, just a bit, just to add a little something in the background. It's not going to make my dish spicy. It's just going to add flavor. And I can set that aside. Now, if you start to feel heat coming off of your pan, it's probably a nice stage to add your oil. In the kits, we've given you oil, and it's about 2 tablespoons. So you'll probably use that for this amount of veg. But if you're at home and pouring it out, around 2 tablespoons should work. But just what you want is enough to coat all of your pan. Oven-proof pan, because we are going in the oven next. And now if you've got your pan nice and hot, you should see a shimmer in the oil. If you're smoking, you want to turn your heat, maybe take your pan off the heat for a second and turn your heat down, and then put it back on. One word about going into the pan of hot oil with veggies, we want to be very careful about that. You might want to have a metal or wooden spoon or some kind of high heat spatula like I do here, because saute means to jump. So we want to move everything around. And when you go into the pan with your veggies, you're going to go pretty close, because if you were to have your bowl up here, you're going to splash hot oil onto yourself. So let's go in with our mirepoix, our onions. You should hear a sizzle, but nothing should start to brown right away. Carrot. Celery, and we can go ahead and toss in the peppers as well. here in the beginning, we're just trying to get the water off the vegetables, so they'll sweat for a little bit. Home will probably start smelling absolutely wonderful right now if you're cooking along. Notice I haven't put the garlic in yet. We want to saute our aromatic vegetables. You can tell right now why they're called aromatic. They have such a wonderful smell. We're going to leave the garlic until these have cooked about 4 or 5 minutes because it's tiny and garlic is really oily, so it tends to burn very quickly. And when garlic burns, it's very acrid. That is not a pleasant bitterness at all, and you have to start all over. So we're going to saute our aromatic veg first. You know, like I was saying, just about every kind of soup or stew or sauce has some kind of starter. It might be miracle, it might be Holy Trinity, as in Cajun and Creole cooking. It might be sofrito, but this heating together, frying of several different kinds of vegetables for flavor is what a lot of dishes start off with. Now you see, and I don't know if you can tell on the camera, maybe not, but my onions are starting to turn translucent. There's a lot of liquid in the pan right now. Like I said, we're sweating. My celery and peppers, the green has popped in those because the coating on the outside of the plant cells is dissolving, and that's allowing the chlorophyll to come through. My carrots haven't done much yet, but we'll see about that. Usually it takes the oven time to fully get those softened. Right, so if you're cooking along, you tell me if your onions are getting to this point. Things are starting to look softened. And medium-high heat is a great looking good. Okay, great. Medium-high heat is perfect for this. Like I said, you do want that sizzle. You just don't want anything browning right away. All right, my onions are almost completely translucent. So I'm going to add my garlic. And we're only going to saute the garlic for about a minute. Make sure to stir it around well once it's added, and it's not going to stick to the bottom of the pan. And it gets ever more fragrant. And once we've had that in there for about a minute, stirring around the whole time, then we can add our tomatoes. Now, if these will, mine have given off a lot of juice right there. I don't know if you can see. So we want to be careful about adding a liquid to a pan of hot fat. It will bubble up, so be very careful.
Chef Tanya, the colors look so great. It looks so good. I wish there was some smell-o-vision on the Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, it is really incredible right now. I am going to help the tomatoes give off their juice with a little bit of salt. If you have a kit, you're going to use the salt for your veggie mixture, and you're going to use it for your biscuit mixture too. We're going to do like a 3-finger pinch. I always start with that. It's about, I don't know, 1/4 of a teaspoon each time. So we're going to do a couple of good pinches, and that will help those tomatoes give off their juices and make it nice and saucy. Oh, there you go. Can you see along this rim over here? I don't know if you can. Lots of juice. You can help it along if you want. Press a little bit. And I'm gonna leave my temp here. Now, if your tomato juice is really starting to evaporate right now, you might want to turn your heat down a little bit because you do want some of this right here. It's gonna make everything happy even before we add our veggie stock mixture. And then once they give off their juice a little bit, you can cook them down somewhat. But these are starting to get soft, so I'm feeling good about adding in our butternut. Stirring that around, and you're gonna just look at this color, all of this golden orange and the red and green. It's just a beautiful dish. Is everybody about this step at home? Are we doing good?
Yeah, for folks that are tuning in on Zoom, yeah, just give us a thumbs up or a reaction if you can. That's perfect. Thanks, guys. We've got a couple of thumbs up, Chef Tanya. I think we're doing good.
Okay. All right. So then, once you get your butternut incorporated and it's starting to heat through, the very last step, we want to stir in our kale. And as you pick up more of your CSA shares and kale or collards or chard or spinach, you can add those in as well. You don't have to use kale. This is just what Ben and Bree had available this week and will be in the shares. I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. I don't want to lose any of that liquid. All right, so we've got this in. I'm going to do one more pinch of salt because we have a lot of veg in here right now. And before I pop this in the oven, we need to add our veggie broth mixture. Look at that green pop out. Now this will go a little bit drab in the oven because of the length of time that it's going to stay in there. Once again, we want to give that cornstarch a little stir and then pour in all of that wonderful veg stock. That cornstarch is going to thicken. You'll see it start to thicken before we take this off the heat, but it will continue to in the oven. Your oven should be set at 375 degrees. I should have said that at the top of the hour, but it is in the recipe, so I hope you preheated. If not, just put your cover on, leave it on here until it only takes most ovens a few minutes to preheat. So just leave it on here and make sure it's still cooking. I've got a lot of thickening happening. I'm going to take a taste of this and make sure I've got my seasoning right. I want to get my salt right before I add my pepper. Just cool down one little bite. So marvelous. Does need a little more salt though. That's a lot of sweet vegetables in there. Oh, and then a pinch of pepper. And stir that in to dissolve. And then I'm going to turn my heat off. Then we stick this in the oven and it's going to cook for about 15-20 minutes, just depending on how large you cut your butternut, how far it was par cooked. I'm going to place the lid on top. This is going to be really heavy, so I'm using plenty of hot pads. I'm going to go into the oven. Now, while that's in the oven, we are going to make our drop biscuits. So I'm going to bring you back over. Okay, so I told most of you picking up kits that you needed to get your butter either in the freezer or the fridge so that it's nice and hard so that we can grate it later. I like to grate either on a cutting board or on a piece of parchment. One thing that's nice about this method is it gets your particles of butter really small, so they're easy to rub onto the flour. You're coating the flour in the fat from the butter when you do this.
Quick question, Chef T, did you add all the pepper to the vegetables or did you save some for anything else?
Oh, no, you just want to add a pinch of pepper.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now we gave you enough salt, more than enough salt for both the veggies and the biscuits in the kits. So on your equipment list is a box grater. And we're gonna get mine back here. We've got some folks who are doing their job too well here tonight. Thank you. All right, so I've got this box grater. Push down 1 more inch. And then we're gonna grate the butter right on here. So this gives you nice tiny little pieces. You can also, what I love about this when I make biscuits or cheddar wafers or anything that requires like a whole pound of butter, and I need to incorporate it. Grating it is an easy way, and what I'll do sometimes even a day or two before, I'll go ahead and grate my butter, wrap it up, stick it in the freezer. I'll show you how I do that because I'm gonna probably stick this back in the freezer for a second once I get it grated. Just so it does it, because you have tiny little pieces now and it's a little warm in this kitchen. It's not as nice and cool as it is outside today. So, we are going to stick this back in the fridge. So once you grate, you get this nice floofy little pile right here. Pull everything out. You want all that fat in your biscuits. And then you don't want to compress it back down because that negates the point of grating it. You just want to press your sheet of parchment around it, okay? And then stick it in the fridge or the freezer, whatever you have handy. Next, we are going to mix up our dry ingredients. So in your kit or in your recipe, and you can measure along with this if you didn't get a kit, I have 1.5 cups of AP flour. We're using Weisenberger flour tonight because it's local and milled in Midway, Kentucky. We do have a little bit of cornmeal in this. It's not cornbread, but we do have a little bit of cornmeal, so sort of cornmeal drop biscuits. We have some baking powder. And if you have the kit, you can drop that in. That is a tablespoon of baking powder. This was an option, but I love adding it. It's about a teaspoon, half teaspoon of smoked paprika and about a half teaspoon of dried thyme. That's one of my favorite combinations for this. And we're just gonna mix those together. Dry ingredients. Now I'm also going to grate the cheddar cheese. We have a Kenny Mattingly's Farmhouse cheddar. About a 2-ounce chunk if you got the kit. And that will give us around 1/2 cup. You can put all the cheese into your biscuit mix, or you can save a little to put on top at the very end and melt that on right before serving. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the cheese in and mix that and let that get coated with the flour. And now you can do this a lot of ways. You can use your hands, you can use a pastry cutter, you could use a couple of forks, but we're gonna work the butter into this flour. And the reason we want it cold is we don't want any of the the water and the butter to separate out and get the flour wet. We want to coat the flour with the fat. So that's why we always use it as cold as possible. Now toss to coat the butter first, and then you just start with that little, I don't know what that is. It's like the money gesture. So you just start doing that in your flour. Maybe turn your bowl, quarter turn here and there. And you want a coarse meal texture. I like using my hands because you can really find the big chunks. I'm big on feeling your food. All right, and you can have pieces like that are, as they say, pea size. Of course, this is grated, so it might like half of a shred or something like that. But you can feel the difference in the flour, and it starts to look a little coarser. It's not quite coming together yet. We're not talking about that much fat. It's not like pastry per se. Okay, make a little well in the middle. I'm gonna get some things out of my way. And you have a cup of milk or buttermilk to pour in the well. And then you're just going to flip, fold the dry ingredients over the milk until it starts to become incorporated. And you get a homogeneous mass and it starts to come together. It will be a loose dough. It won't be like roll biscuits because these are drop biscuits. So this is a little different. And now we're gonna pretend like our 15 or 20 minutes have gone past. I'm gonna pull out a cobbler I made earlier so we can put our drop biscuits on top so you can see that process. All right, so this one's been in the oven and it's gotten wonderfully thicker, and you can see our kale is a little bit darker. Now I find it, you could use a couple of spoons, but I find it really easy to use a portion scoop or ice cream scoop in order to do drop biscuits. That way everything stays the same size. We're gonna drop these on little by little, and you wanna leave a little bit of an area in between each drop biscuit. Now you're not gonna put the cover on when we put this back in because we want these to brown. So these will expand. We'll put the last of it. I don't want to waste it, so we'll put the last of it in the corners. All right, and we go back into our oven for just a few more minutes. Be very careful with these oven pot pans. All right, and then it's just a waiting game. So Katie, if there are any questions, or Robin?
Chef Tanya, we just had some comments. Sherry said it looks so good, and it does. It's like mouth watering. So I think what we wanted is just some top tips for stock, and then also maybe even before we circle back to that, top tips for like biscuits, because I know a couple of people said that they were just like wanting, they hadn't previously shredded the butter and making biscuits, and so and that's good for a couple of reasons, but if you want to just give a reason like why you should do that or why it makes sense, right?
Okay, well, for stock, your basis is going to be carrot, onion, celery. That is what you start with almost every single time. You could say if you want to make a chicken or a beef or some other kind of animal stock, just say bones off things. That will give you some body. I'm so reluctant to use these terms, body to your stock, but basically it gives it more of a mouthfeel, and stock that has been made with bones will also thicken as it reduces because of the collagen or the gelatinous part of the bones that infuses into the stock. And that's why a lot of people were really big on bone broths for a while. If you're not using animal bones, if you're just doing a vegetable stock, then like we were talking about earlier, a lot of things that are good that I put in repeatedly are the cores of bell peppers, sometimes some garlic. If I peel ginger, I'll put the ginger peel in there. Some kind of acid is nice, so leavings from tomatoes, or if you have tomatoes that are getting a little wrinkly and don't know what to do with them, throw one of those in the stock. And if you have half a lemon left that you're not going to use before it goes bad, you can throw that in. But the acid is a really nice balancing element as well. It brightens everything up. You have a lot of sweet, earthy vegetables, and so adding acid will balance that. We like the celery and the green peppers for their bitterness. Celery leaves are also very bitter, but again, if you have a lot of balance of sweet veg, a lot of root veg, you could put the celery leaves in your stock. Potato peels, just a few, not a ton, but potato peels are a great addition to stock. And any other root veg, beet does make it pink. If you have purple carrots, they'll make it purple like grape Kool-Aid. But as long as you don't mind the color, they're great background flavors. A very few farmers grow actually white beets. So those are perfection, just to throw one of those in there. The stronger flavor things like turnip is good. I'll add a turnip if I'm going to be making burgoo, which has turnip in it as well, or if I'm doing a beef stock for pasties or something like that, that will include a rutabaga or a turnip, and it's going to echo those flavors. I'll put that in. And herbs are nice. So we save all of our parsley stems. When we use parsley in here, we use parsley a lot. Fresh thyme is wonderful in stock, and your standard is of course bay leaf and 5 or 6 peppercorns in a nice large stock pot. All of it you start cold and then bring it up to a boil and turn it down immediately. There are very few things in cooking that you actually really and truly boil to cook them, so we always bring it up to a boil because that's faster than trying to get something to a simmer. So we go ahead and bring it up to a boil and then turn it back down. And for veggie stock, half an hour to an hour is all you need to do, and then just strain it and either use it right away or refrigerate it or freeze it. It freezes wonderfully. We have a whole freezer full of different kinds of stock here at the Food Connection. Did that answer?
No, that was great, Chef Tanya. That was super thorough. And then if you have it in your freezer, do you need to use it within like 6 months, or does it matter? Or like how long do you feel like it keeps well?
Yeah, 6 months. I think if you have a really good freezer that's not defrosting often, you could extend it a little bit past that, depending on what else you have in your freezer. If there are no strong flavors in your freezer, that would be fine. I don't tend to have stock around that long because I use it for so many things. It's wonderful to cook grains in and pasta and add to bean soup or other soups. So it's that's a kind of coming at me.
Yeah. No, of course. Well, and I don't know if there's any other vegetables you'd recommend sauteing with stock, but I know like sometimes a lot of recipes call for like you can saute your kale with stock instead of water, right? Like, so just for folks that are in this call, if you're like, oh my gosh, well, what do I do with stock if I'm not making soup? Like Chef T said, like just using it as your water is often a good substitute.
Yeah, it's a great way to layer in flavor, and people aren't going to taste anything in particular. It'll just be a little extra something. They'll be like, "Ooh, this is so much better than my kale," because of all of that balance of flavor on the very end or in the background. As far as biscuits, oh boy. Now, of course, we made drop biscuits today, but if you're talking about roll biscuits, I think the biggest thing is to get your butter really good and cold. So that way you don't get any of the separation of the butter and it coats your flour well. Don't over mix once you add the liquids. Just as soon as everything starts to come together in one clump, just kind of press it. You're wanting to incorporate everything in the bowl, so you don't want too many crumbs hanging around. So I like to press though instead of keep kneading. You want to knead a few times to get everything together, but don't over knead. And then massage. And then there are a couple of other schools on this, either just resting your dough a little bit before you roll it out and cut it will make more tender biscuits. And I tend to like a butter biscuit rather than one just made with shortening because of the flavor addition. Now, shortening sometimes will give you flakier biscuits because you don't have the added ingredients that butter does. It's just fat. So it just melts away and leaves all those lovely flaky layers. The other way you can treat your biscuit dough before you roll it out is to fold it. And if anybody's ever made a laminated dough like croissants or danishes, you know what I'm talking about. So you roll your dough out, you fold it into thirds, you roll it again, let it rest for a period. You fold it into thirds, you roll it again, you let it rest for a period. And you'll do that about 3 times. And that creates a lot of layers again. So it does give you, if you've ever had, a lot of people cut those biscuits into squares rather than into rounds. And it has a lot of layers. That's how they achieve that in a biscuit.
No, that's great information. And Sherry, if you have any other questions, feel free to take yourself off mute and just ask Chef Tanya, but hopefully we answered everything. And we were talking, Chef Tanya, if folks do like a little bit of spice, they could also even add maybe some hot peppers to these biscuits with their cheddar or, you know, so feel free to kind of make it your own and add a little bit more to your biscuits if you want. But yeah, this is a great start, is just like a simple drop biscuit on top and then even topping it with cheese after. Gosh.
Yes, and I think you mentioned, Katie, that someone asked about cornbread. A thick cornbread mix batter would be nice on top. You could even make this like a pot pie and roll out a pastry crust and tuck that around the edges and have almost like a veggie pot pie. And then some people might do something more like an herb dumpling. So we can do the jalapeno if you do like spice. Actually, if I would probably even like a little bit of heat, maybe something more modulated, something more along the lines of a poblano or something, but just a wee bit of heat in the veg mix would be nice, especially because you do have all these nice sweet veg in there. And I love sweet and hot together. I don't know about you, but the jalapeno in the biscuit mix would be marvelous as well. You don't have to use cheddar, whatever kind of gradable or crumbly cheese that you have on hand, you can use. And it's more about just that combination and getting the right ratio of the veggie mix to the bread. And I think a lot of people make a lot of fruit cobblers and you're sort of used to eyeing that. So you can still use that as a guideline.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we hope this kind of gives you some inspiration. I definitely, when Chef Tanya, when you first were like, oh, let's do a savory cobbler, I was like, I have never made a savory cobbler, but I was just gonna, I don't know if we need, you know, if we have more time before you're pulling it out, you had told me about that other variation, the fall variation with the root veg. And then I've had a really good experience doing savory like gayettes too, like, or just any other like savory takes on dishes, you know, or kind of fun.
Yeah. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of savory bread puddings, which is like, some people say, oh, that's just stuffing, but it's a very custardy stuffing. So it's very rich and it's wonderful, especially with fall veg. So all the things that we've used today would be wonderful to stir into a savory bread pudding, and it's made the same way. You just don't put sugar or sweet spices into your custard mix. I've also done galettes, and I think some people are used to this maybe with tomato. You've seen this seems like the last couple of summers, we've seen a lot of features in food magazines about tomato galettes. But you can do that with any of these veg. I love a rustic galette where you don't put it in a pan. You just put a circle of pastry dough out on a sheet pan, put your filling in, and then you just sort of pleat an edge around your filling. Now it needs to be a pretty tight filling. It can't be too liquidy in order to do those rustic tarts, but those turn out beautifully, and you can kind of use the last of your veg to decorate on top what's going to be seen. So that's beautiful. You could use this veg cobbler throughout the rest of the growing season as you get root veg, as you get different greens. If you wanted to, or if you shop for mushrooms at the farmers markets, or there are some CSA shares that once in a while will get mushrooms. They would be marvelous in this. And then if you wanted to add some protein, so like some legumes or beans or some kind of your favorite meat, it could go in here if that was something that you desired. Maybe some of Ben's lamb, especially with those root veg. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I just made myself hungry.
Well, and Kristen has said she loves to make savory muffins, and one of her favorites that she's tried from a bakery was onion walnut. Have you had anything like that before? That sounds so
Onion
good.
walnut muffins. It's a Waldy Maloof recipe. He has a Hudson Valley cookbook, and I have when I worked at Holly Hill, I made my weight in onion walnut muffins.
Oh, really?
And they're addictive. They're something to I know it. When you first hear it, you kind of go, that's a hard one to approach. But they're this wonderful blend of caramelly sweet and savory, and they're great for, and you can go sweet with your filling, you can go savory. So like maybe a little country ham with apple butter on one of those. Absolutely amazing. And then I've gone the other way, like I've sweetened mascarpone and put it in with some kind of pear or poached pear with those. So they're marvelous. I'm glad to see another fan of those out there.
Yeah, well,
sometimes it's a hard sell.
yeah. And Chef Tanya, who would be the author or like reference? Who would you steer people towards if they wanted a recipe for it?
It's let me see if I can. I'm gonna just look it up here. It's Waldy, W-A-L-D-Y, and I think it's Maloof, M-A-L-O-U-F, and it's the Hudson Valley cookbook. Let me just double check. Yeah, Waldy Maloof, M-A-L-O-U-F, and let me check the name. Hudson River Valley Cookbook, which I have a copy of at home right now.
Does it? I think I found it. Chef T, does it have a green cover, like
kind of a white and landscapey color cover? Actually, there've been two. There's a green with like a fall background, and then there's a white with sort of the river, like a watercolor landscape.
Okay, perfect. I'll drop it into the chat.
Yeah. Let me see if we're doing okay over here. Oh my goodness. Well, my baking powder is working well. Hang on. Oh my goodness. Take a look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Huh.
That's great.
Yeah, for cool nights. What do you think? And then I love how the sauce is bubbling up in between. That's why I like to leave a little space. So this is perfect because we have these little pods here, these little biscuits, and we can just cut in between those. And I've got a shallow pasta bowl here, and we can just throw that in there. Maybe get a little extra veg. And there you go, y'all. Anybody hungry?
Yes, very. Well, and we hope everything's turning out okay in your kitchens as well. We're so glad you guys could join us to cook along. And Chef T, do you top this with anything? I know you said maybe some fresh herbs.
Yes, fresh herbs. So whatever you used in it would be nice. So if you still have those sprigs of thyme, if you have fresh ones, I could throw on there parsley. When we get more in the root veg stage, would be nice to both add into the biscuits and then put on top. You could put a little extra cheese, or reiterate some of your veg with that. This could be a side, or of course you could add a salad to it and make a meal out of it.
Oh my gosh, it looks so great. Well, and I just want to know before folks hop off, we're going to drop a link to our event survey, and just want to thank you all again for tuning in with us on this gorgeous fall evening. We are going to do a little giveaway. So for everyone that fills out our survey, we're going to randomly select a person and we'll do a little giveaway with our CSA cookbook. So this is our asparagus to zucchini CSA cookbook that we do as a giveaway. And so we'll drop a link in, and just are excited for you guys to share your feedback about this event, how your recipe turned out. It looks so good, Chef Tanya. So I don't know if there's any other things we want to send folks home with, or if you guys have any other final questions, you can take yourself off mute and we can get those answered for you before we hop off.
Well, if you do like cooking, I know we have some UK sustainability students on tonight. We have some stuff coming up. On Tuesday, the 28th, we have a gathering at the table dinner where you cook and eat together. That's with Campus Kitchens. We always partner with them for these dinners. And we also have on October 12th, we have a class with UK Dining, which is also a free class. It's called Nutrition Sense, and it's how to cook healthy on a college budget. And then for the community-wide members out there, we also host once a month a happy hour now, where we used to have First Friday breakfast. We've sort of rebranded, and it's now in the afternoon at the new facility on UK's campus called the Cornerstone. It's the second Wednesday of every month, which I think is the 13th of October, and it's from 3 to 5. So come join us. We'll have a lot of locally sourced snacks, maybe from your farm that you're getting your CSA share from, and we have some kind of lecture. And our next one is really exciting. It's a lot of the Lee Initiative graduates. Edward Lee has started this program out of Louisville, and we'll be joined by some of the people who've been through that program, and they're going to discuss what COVID has done to the restaurant industry. So you please join us for that. It's sure to be fascinating.
Absolutely. And Chef Tanya, just for a quick reference, how do folks, should they just follow like the Food Connection for more information about the events, or just to stay connected? Okay, awesome. So
yeah, our tag is at UK Food Connect on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Awesome. I will drop that in. So look for at UK Food Connect for information about these events. And then we, Oak also has a CSA kind of specific social media handle called KY Farm Share. And I'll drop that in as well. And we share recipes, resources. We work with Chef Tanya throughout the season. So if you loved this, we'll hopefully have more demos next CSA season. So we'll drop in some information there, but just appreciate you all for tuning in. And we had lots of comments come through. Biscuits are looking good for folks. Recipes are looking good for folks. So we're so happy to hear that, and hope you all have a